Can you call this number after?
Finally, let me tell you something about Israel he won't tell you. He is a father of 5 incredible children. Still proudly of his wife, who's right over there. He also has two incredible grandchildren, 6 years old and 6 months old. It's truly a devoted family. When he talks about a family, he means guys. Without further ado, Israel Pinto.
Thank you, Anna. Stephen, Pearl? We have Stephen here? Pearl? Alrighty, folks. We are going to be very cognizant of your time. It's very important to get you in and get you out of here, but we are going to cover a tremendous amount of information, folks. This is going to be unlike any workshop that you've been through before, okay? So, very quickly, we are actually at the doorsteps, folks, of a historic moment. We're facing something in America right now that we've never seen in our history, let alone anybody else's history. And this situation isn't like a single event. This is more of a condition, a situation that's been brewing for quite some time, okay? It's getting bigger every day, folks. We are woefully unprepared as a nation to deal with this. It's going to affect every single person in this room, and it's going to have dramatic implications for our entire country for the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And folks, this is very important. It's coming, and it's coming like a freight train, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop it. You're probably wondering what I'm talking about. And the answer is going to surprise you. I'm talking about retirement. I'm talking about the largest single generation of folks born in our country, baby boomers, are retiring. They're all turning 70. The system wasn't set up that way. When FDR signed the Social Security Act in 1934-35 and set the retirement age at 65, the life expectancy of an American was 62. They never expected any real need out of that system. Okay? But it's coming. We've got 70 million people retiring at the same time. And we've got the first generation that's living 20, 30, 40, 50 years past retirement. I spoke to a lady today. Her mom is 105 years old. It's happening, folks. Medicare and Social Security are woefully underfunded and sinking into a deeper hole every single day. We are told a certain number. I'm going to show you some numbers that are going to blow your mind as far as how unfunded Medicare and Social Security. Now, I'm not saying this to scare you folks. I'm just telling you here because somebody's got to tell you the truth. And the truth is you guys have to protect yourself. My grandmother always said the most important hand is the one connected to your own wrist. So we have to be proactive in taking care of ourselves. That's why we're here tonight. We're here to learn. I'm here to kind of show you some ideas, some tools, some strategies to put you guys in a better position financially to make better decisions in your retirement. Okay? We can't solve the entire retirement issue in one workshop, but hopefully you can glean and take some information today to set your family on a course or a path for a better financial future. Not to only survive retirement, but to enjoy retirement, folks. You've earned it. You guys have done without for 30, 40, 50 years. These are your golden years. You shouldn't sacrifice because our government doesn't have their I's and their T's dotted. Okay? So again, I'm here to help. My name is Israel Pinto. As Anna said, I'm a financial advisor, but more important, I'm a retirement specialist. That's the specialized training that I have done. Okay? So tonight, I'm going to take you kind of on this 1 hour or so long journey into the world of retirement from a vantage point from a guy who just primarily works in retirement. Okay? Everybody grab your folder for me, please. All right, and in your folder, these are the 2 most important sheets. This one here. So you guys can take copious notes. If you're not taking notes, you're hurting yourselves. Okay? Then this one here as well. All right, these are the 12 common complaints that folks have over the last 13 years of me doing these workshops, right? And most folks come to these workshops with at least one or two of these concerns. So what if you guys can do me a favor, because this data gets used for future workshops, take a second, fill out the top a little bit. You don't have to put all your personal information, just your name. We know who you are. And check off a couple of those that you have concerns coming into tonight. I'll give you guys a couple minutes and then we'll get started. As we go along, folks, we're going to have a few different sections, and I'm going to kind of share some of the client stories on some of the things that some clients were thinking about prior, some of the strategies that they implemented. On each table, there's a client story, client success sheet on Social Security. You can read those. Please don't take those home. Those are ours. Some of the stuff that we've done for other clients and some of the stuff that you guys have got to look out for. And we're going to get into that, because Social Security is going to be the number one first topic that we deal with today. All righty, give you another 10 seconds or so, and then we'll get started. All righty, folks. I get asked this all the time. You seem passionate about what you do. I am. It started at Sherman Shoes in 1999. Anybody remember Sherman Shoes? Anybody in here buy shoes from Sherman Shoes? Yeah. I'd been working there 9 years. Found out that they were shutting their doors. Sherman Shoes was an institution here in Chicagoland, Chicago proper. It came to a shock to us. I had just started a young family, so I needed income rather quickly. I was fortunate that I was a good salesman and built relationships, and I built a relationship with an insurance agent. And I took a job as an insurance agent right when they shut their doors. It was supposed to be temporary, but after a couple months, I realized that I was really enjoying myself. I enjoyed connecting with folks. I enjoyed protecting folks. I enjoyed the fact that I was there for folks at their worst possible time when they lost someone. Fast forward 4 months later, I started my own agency and I took off. I had a pivotal turning point in my life. I was referred to a client in the North Shore, very wealthy individual. We got to talk and he invited me and introduced me to his financial advisor. And he showed me some strategies. They're like, wow, that this is what some of the wealthiest people in our country do. And I was like, those strategies seem pretty sound. And I can use those strategies myself. So I implemented some of those strategies in my own portfolio. And I'm selling insurance, and 2001 hits. 9/11. We don't have to relive it. A couple planes crashed into a couple of the Twin Towers, right? But the financial strain that our country went through, everybody lost 40% of their wealth, their retirement. I was concerned. I was concerned with my parents. People were concerned about Social Security because it goes hand in hand. I had a 401k from Sherman Shoes and I lost half. But I looked at that account that I implemented about a year before that from Mr. C and his advisor, and it didn't lose any money. I was like, So I started researching advanced strategies, and I figured, okay, let's see what I can do to help folks in retirement. I got certified as a Social Security expert, bonds. I've got so many certifications, but it was tough sledding, folks, because it was contrary to what the mainstream was telling folks, right? I was entrenched and I was struggling, but I was fighting. 2008 hit, the mortgage crisis. Here we go again. Folks lost 40% of their money. I had about 200 clients at that time, and I was getting phone calls, emails. Not one of my clients lost a penny. I knew I figured it out. These strategies that the wealthiest people were implementing, they're available to us. So for the next 6 years, I did zero marketing at my company. Zero. It was all referral after referral after referral. We're incredibly proud that we got about 70% of our clients are referrals. And we just took off. So people ask me, what is it that you do? And I tell them proudly, I'm the guardian of the wealth of the two greatest generations ever, baby boomers and Gen Xers. And what I do is I help protect the income for the things that you need in retirement to help maximize the income for the things that you want in retirement. It is possible, folks. So an industry that I fell into happenstance 23 years ago, I'm incredibly proud to have over 1,300 clients. And again, not one of them has lost a penny and have truly optimized their retirement. Okay, so let's get started. Solving the retirement puzzle. The reason we're here, you guys have got that in there. If you guys Google me, you're going to see Institute of Financial Wealth, Better Business Bureau A+ rating, my LinkedIn. So yeah, Google me if you guys want when you leave here. So all our advisory dollars, all assets under management, go under Foundations Investment Advisors. Okay, disclaimer. We're one of the fastest growing RIAs in the country, and the reason being because of wealth preservation, right, and referrals. Okay, my commercial's over. So retiring today looks different. The reason we're all here. All righty. So we're going to break it into 4 sections. We're going to do Social Security first. It's the biggest one. It's going to take the longest. Then we're going to delve into taxes and inflation, market volatility and how to protect yourself, longevity, long-term care. Okay. This isn't your parents and your grandparents' long-term care. The overwhelming majority of you in here can qualify for long-term care and can't afford it. Okay. So by a show of hands, you can raise your hand for more than one topic. How many of you are here for Social Security? Raise your hand. Okay. How many here for taxes and inflation? Raise your hand. Market volatility? Okay. And longevity, long-term care, health care, Medicare. Okay. Okay. Very good. All righty. So maximizing Social Security benefits. Again, I'm certified as a Social Security expert. I get on the phone with a lot of folks. I get Social Security attorneys reaching out to me for counsel on some of the things. I get on the phone and I talk to some of the managers at Social Security, and they're blown away because they're not trained properly, and it's not their fault. So they don't understand a lot of the new legislation. I stay up on all the legislation. We're going to go over the 2015 Bipartisan Act and why timing is important. It's absolutely critical when and how you file your Social Security. Okay. A little history of Social Security. It was enacted by FDR in 1935. Okay. The program set the retirement age at 65. And again, as I shared with you guys, the average life expectancy was 62. They had no plan on having to pay out that much. Okay. So fun fact, Ida Mae Fuller. She was the first recipient of Social Security. She retired in 1939, started collecting her check in 1940 at the age of 65. And look at that, folks. She lived to be 100 years old. Good for her, right? The joke's on the Fed. So for some of us here who think we're only going to live 22, 23 years in retirement, you got to plan out for 30, 35 years, folks. Okay? All righty. So Social Security basics. What is the minimum age you can file? It's 62. So if you file at 62, you're only getting 70 to 75% of the max benefit you can get. Okay? We'll get into that here shortly. So FRA stands for your full retirement age. The majority of us here, our full retirement age is 67. Some of us is 66 and 5 months, 8 months, 10 months, okay? That's where you have and get your PIA. Write this down. Primary insurance amount. That is the baseline. Whether you file early, they subtract from that. Whether you file later, they add to that. And we'll get into some of the numbers, okay? All right, the maximum age is 70. So you file at 70. You don't wait past 70 because there's no benefit to it, okay? Now, in a perfect world, you would think cookie cutter advice, hey, I'm just going to wait to 70 to maximize it. Sure, but you got to make sure you live past 83. Because if you don't live past 83, you could have filed at 67. You've lost money. You've left money on the table. So if we knew the exact date we're going to pass, then it's easy to just maximize. But the key here is how to file optimally. And it's not necessarily filing at 70. Okay? So cost of living adjustment, COLA. This is a great provision in the Social Security Act. Okay? So that is to combat inflation. Okay? So since 1975, the cost of living adjustment has been 3.77. Over the last 20 years, it's been 2.63 on average. In 2024, it was 3.2. Can anybody tell me what the cost of living adjustment was in 2023? Anybody? Throw a number out there, somebody. 8%. Who said that? 8%. It was 8.7%. So the reason I bring that up is we had a client who came into our office. I'll share with you what that is at the end. We had a client who came into our office in 2022, and he was planning on filing for 2023. And we're like, we took a look at his portfolio, his assets, and he didn't need to. He just figured, hey, let me just do it. I'm at full retirement age. He came to one of these workshops. He said, I can add 8%? Yeah. And we crunched the number and said, like, there's no sense in you filing. So he waited. And he goes, maybe I'll wait 1 year. So since he waited, he added 8.7% to his benefit by waiting 1 year. He's actually going to wait to 70 now because we worked out some numbers. But that's not where it ends, folks. I'm going to show you there's more, okay? So the Social Security wage tax goes up every year. In 2020, it was $137,700. That was the max that they would tax for Social Security. In 2024, it went up to $168,000. They're projecting 2028 to be over $200,000. So they're taking the same percentage for higher earning folks. They're not capping it. And there's talk that the Social Security tax is going to go up by 2%, 1% to the employee and 1% to the employer. Okay, I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but if they were to do that, that would almost fix Social Security. But they're constantly kicking the can down the road because no administration wants to add that tax. So again, something to be cognizant of, okay? The maximum benefit at full retirement age nationwide is $38.22 for 2024. The average benefit nationwide is $3,033 for a married couple and $1,907 for a single couple, right? Now, that is average. You guys are well above average. You guys are better earners, right? You guys are better savers. So these numbers aren't your numbers. Like for me in particular, my full retirement age is 67. My benefit's $3,200 right now, right? But I'm a little younger, so it takes 35 years of the average. So I have some jobs that I had when I was a teenager still on the rolls. So those are going to fall off, so my benefit's going to go up, okay? Can anybody tell me what the maximum benefit is for a 70-year-old in 2024? $4,855. And that goes up every year. So again, in a perfect world, cookie cutter, you might as well wait to 70. But again, we don't know, okay? There's math involved. So the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2015 reallocated funds from the Old Age Survivors Insurance Trust Fund to the Disability Insurance Trust Fund to ensure payment of full disability benefits into 2022. Without such a reallocation, the Disability Insurance Trust Fund would have been depleted in December of 2016. I bring this up just to show the mismanagement of the funds between the different organizations and departments in retirement in Social Security, okay? So they took from Peter to pay Paul so Paul would have some money, okay? So this is kind of the mess that we're dealing with right now, all right? So my team could attest to this. For years, I am a staunch advocate of Social Security. I was always that guy. Social Security is going nowhere. It's going nowhere. It's going nowhere. It's going nowhere. Even until end of last year. I'm not so sure now. Okay, there's been some dramatic changes to Social Security. Even if they don't do away with it, they've got to make some major cuts. We hear it on the news all the time. So one of the things that they took out was a file and suspend. In the past, if you filed incorrectly, you could suspend, pay back. If you're a full retirement age, you wouldn't have to pay back, and you could start all over whenever you decide. You can no longer do that, folks. Once you file, it is forever. So you got to get it right the first time, okay? There was a young lady. She came into one of our events. She panicked after the event. She goes, I got to meet with you. I got to meet with you. She was a nurse working 2 jobs. I got to meet with you. Please help me. Please help me. This was prior to this changing. Please help me. Please help me. So we worked it out. We met at the Glenview Library because we had to meet between her shifts. And she goes, I made a mistake. I filed my Social Security. She was 67. She was a great earner. She didn't need it. She didn't need her Social Security. But her daughter kept telling her, hey, 67, you might as well file. So what we did is we suspended the file and we held on. We saved her about $200 and some odd $1,000 of a mistake. The average American files suboptimally and leaves $110,000 on the table of Social Security. That's the average, okay? So the reason I bring that up is we got to do it, and we got to do it right, folks, okay? You got to get it right the first time. Another provision that they had that they got rid of was the survivor's benefits, right? So in the past, you could do a restricted application. So if you're a married couple, one of the spouses could file on the spousal benefit of the other spouse, collect 50%, and then when they decided to file on their own, they could file on their own. What a nice provision. Half, right? You can't do that anymore. It's gone. Okay? Major change. This is a major change. Most folks counted on that for decades, and that's gone. So you can imagine what's coming down the pipe. Okay? So we're going to go through we got to use hypothetical here, but this is an actual case. Okay? Names have been changed. So we got Ron and Nancy. Okay? Ron was currently 60, Nancy's 58. Their monthly benefit at full retirement age at 67, Ron's was $3,000, Nancy's was $2,200. Let's say Ron lives to 85, Nancy lives to 90, but they decided to start taking benefits at 62. So the cumulative value of the benefit is $1.9 million. Okay, not bad. And Social Security isn't bad when, as a couple, you get $2 million in retirement. So what if Ron and Nancy decided to wait? I'll be with you in a second. What if Ron and Nancy decided to wait till full retirement age? Get the full benefit here, right, at 67, living the same life expectancy. Now we're looking at $2.3 million. Okay? But what if Ron and Nancy had all their other ducks in a row, all the assets, and really didn't need Social Security, right? Ron's living past that magical age of 83. He's at 85. So is Nancy. So they decided to wait to 70. Now you're looking at $2.5 million. You're looking at a difference of $619,000. That's why knowing when to file is critically important, right? That's why having a plan in place is critically important. And I'm going to show you exactly why. So we're using this as an example. We're using 66. It's just part of how Social Security wants it because there's still some full retirement agers here at 66. So at 66, if that was your full retirement age, we're using $1,000 to make the math easy, right? But again, we're not average here. So you do the numbers. Like for me, we'll do the 3,000. So if you decide to file a year early, you lose 7%. 2 years, 13%. 3 years, 20%. 4 years, you're losing 25%. Now, if you decide to wait that year, you're earning an additional 8%. Second year, another 8%. Third year, another 8%. Fourth year, another 8%. Let that sink in, right? Where are you getting market returns at 8%? You're not. I know. That's what we do, right? So it may be better to use some of your other assets and hold off on Social Security if you feel and you know genetics and health, you're going to live past a certain age. And again, that's a math problem. So let's remember the gentleman who came into my office. He was going to file in 2023, right? But he waited. Remember what COLA was? 8.7 plus that other 8%. By waiting 1 year, he gained 16.7%. That's why planning is important, folks, right? That's why you have to have your ducks in a row. That's why you have to have a plan for Social Security, okay? So we've been told, right? So here's the story that Social Security tells us, right? Since 1987, the feds have collected $26 trillion in Social Security tax. Since 1987. They've paid out $24 trillion in Social Security benefits. So if you reach out to the Social Security Trust and their trustee, and you say, hey, I want to report to Social Security, they're going to tell you they have a surplus of $2 trillion. That's what they're going to tell you. If you look at the real number from the Congressional Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan, bipartisan watchdog for the expenditures of our country, this is from this year. They say in assets we have $5.4 trillion. and Social Security is in a hole $50 trillion. These are real numbers, folks. Okay? Medicare is in the hole $66 trillion. Where's that $2 trillion? We do some funky accounting as a country when it comes to government programs, folks. Okay? So again, not saying this to scare you. You got to be prepared. All righty. So, and this is a partisan issue, folks. This is David M. Walker. He was the 7th Comptroller General of the U.S. He worked on 2 administrations, Clinton's and Bush's, right? So this is a quote from him. The trust fund is neither funded nor can it be trusted. There's no money in there, folks. There's no money. So something to be aware of is something horrific happens down the pike, you got to have your outside assets in place and protected to cover the shortfall of Social Security. Social Security in this room is probably going to account for about 22% of your retirement income because you guys have done better. Nationwide, it's about 35%. The maximum that Social Security and the government wants it to be 40%. So you guys, that would be about 22%, 25% of your retirement income. Okay? So I'm going to tell you a quick story very quickly. Okay? This is a little rowboat. So I had a mentor in the 90s who had a sailboat. Really nice guy. And he's like, hey, Israel, you want to go sailing? I had never been sailing. I'd been in pontoon boats and stuff like that. So we went to Montrose Harbor. And like, cool. So we go to Montrose Harbor, and he goes, that's my boat, 27-foot sailboat in the Star Dock. And it's like, so where are we going? He's like, hey, we got to pick up the dinghy to get to the boat. So we're picking up a dinghy, and it's a little smaller than this, but this is a better picture. So I got a rowboat. So I like in retirement, the start of your retirement, to having a rowboat. Okay? That's when you start, 2-5 years into retirement, you're saving, you're setting to the side, right? That boat is not really good in the open seas, right? It's a smaller boat. We had a friend of ours too. His name is Bill. He would take that little dinghy, smaller than this, onto Lake Michigan, 2-3 miles out. He would capsize all the time. He's a great swimmer. He's Canadian. Those Canadians are cut a little bit different. And again, he would take, but this boat isn't ready for the open seas, open ocean. I'll finish that story shortly. So the next slide is going to kind of segue us into what the next topic is.
Where's all your money going, Taxes. It's not going to work. It's the worst part of the game of what?
Taxes is the next section. Taxes are really the worst part of the game because we get taxed like crazy. So this is what we're going to cover in taxes. Taxes and inflation in retirement. You got to be cognizant of that, folks, because again, we're in a funky situation with the so-called national debt, $35.5 trillion. They got to do something. So this is what we're going to cover. Historical tax rates, where taxes are going, Roth conversions, required minimum distribution planning, and inflation. So here's the supposed national debt. You can look up that clock right now. It's probably going to be about $35.6 trillion. That is, according to the feds, our debt. So there's 2 ways to cover that debt. You either cut spending or raise revenue. How do you raise revenue as a government? You raise taxes, right? So again, something to be aware of. The Secure Act of 2022 increased required minimum distribution starting at age from 70 and a half to 72, and it's going up. Do you folks know what required minimum distributions are? Okay, so you have a qualified account, a 401k IRA, simple, that you have not paid taxes. Even though you don't need the money, you still have to start withdrawing at a certain time, a certain percentage, or you get penalized. The Fed wants their tax revenue. Okay? They, out of the kindness of their heart, they moved it from 70 to 72, 72 and a half, 73. But again, they want their revenue. Okay? That Secure Act eliminated stretch IRAs, removed contribution age limits for IRA accounts, increased automatic 401k enrollment from 10% to 15%, and encourages the use of annuities in qualified employer plans. Okay, so when you hit 73, even though you don't need the money, you have to withdraw 3.77 from your qualified account. It's a must. Again, they want their taxes. So if you don't need the money, right, RMDs can become a real tax problem. We get some folks that have quite a substantial nest egg and they don't need the money. So you've got to do some advanced planning for those RMDs. Okay. So you got to forecast an RMD plan to develop an income plan. Because retirement, folks, I really want you guys to have a paradigm shift. It isn't about how big you've amassed your portfolio. You got to start calling it your savings because it's your savings, right? Doesn't matter how big it is. What matters is how much income you can get out of that account. Retirement is not about how much you've saved. Retirement is about your budget and income. And I'm going to show you why here shortly. Okay. So I asked this across the board. We used to do about 20 of these a year. We're down to about 10. So by a show of hands, who thinks taxes are going to go down in the future? By a show of hands, who thinks taxes are going to stay the same? By a show of hands, who thinks taxes are going to go up? Okay, it's a consensus. So we got to protect ourselves, right? You'd be surprised that we are in some of the lowest tax rates in our country's history. Doesn't feel like it because we get taxed. There's other hidden taxes and we'll cover those. But when Ronald Reagan was making movies, the upper tax bracket was 90%. So if you earned over $100,000, anything above that, you got taxed 90%. So Ronald Reagan would do one movie a year because he got paid $100,000 a movie. He didn't want to work for free. So we are in some of the lowest tax rates in our country's history, and even these next 2 years, because the former administration did a tax cut and those sunset at the end of 2025. So taxes are on sale right now. Okay? So let's understand those qualified accounts, your 401ks, IRAs, your SEPs, your simples, accounts that you haven't paid taxes on. There's nearly $9 trillion in employee-sponsored defined contribution plans, of which $6.3 trillion are in 401ks. Okay? So if you got a 401k through your employer, right, you're basically left to do it alone. There's limited investment options and very few safe options. When I talk to folks, yeah, well, I changed it from a 60-40, 60% stocks, 40% bonds to a 50-50, right? 50% bonds, because that tends to be the only safe allocation within your 401k. But as we know, we've been killed on bonds the last 2 years, okay? If you haven't looked at your statement, please look at your statement and see where the bond portion of your statement has gone to, okay? So knowing and understanding your 401k investments falls on you when you have an employer-based 401k. 92% of all retirement accounts in our country are qualified accounts. The Fed is waiting for that money. That is a tremendous amount of revenue for them. So when you first started that 401k, it seemed like a really good idea. Everybody write this down. Ted Benna. Does anybody know who he is? Ted Benna is the godfather of the 401k. He was the originator. You should see what Ted Benna has to say about 401ks now. Okay? Initially seemed great. Hey, let's just defer. Since we're not paying taxes, we're getting a gain on a bigger amount, right? But that's like if you're a farmer, instead of buying the seeds up front, you tell them, hey, I'm not going to buy the seeds. I'll pay you on the harvest. Now you're paying on the harvest. You're going to pay more, right? You've gotten into a partnership, a business relationship with the Fed. And you don't know what the Fed's going to charge you on lending you that money or holding on to your money. That's where we're at right now. So initially it seemed like a good idea, but we got to be aware of this now. So what are your options? You do nothing when it comes to taxes. You defer and pay unknown taxes later. You pay taxes now at known rates versus unknown. Or there's some tax efficient planning options that you have. Convert to a Roth. Now, I'm not your financial advisor. Don't go out and convert your money to a Roth. Okay? That's not what we're here for. Okay? I'm just giving you some of the options that are available to you. So again, this is just for teaching purposes, okay? Convert your traditional IRA to a Roth. Take advantage of living benefit plans, tax code section 7702. Everybody write that down, section 7702, and do some research when you leave here. All right, so converting to a Roth IRA. Roth conversions may provide a hedge against future tax rate conversions. Yeah, obviously taxes are a major concern. I think that was about second behind Social Security of you folks coming in here. Roth conversions will allow you to pay taxes at today's rate. No income taxes due on future earnings. And here's the biggie. Does not count towards tax on Social Security. So 80% of you in this room are going to pay taxes on your Social Security. You're going to pay on 50 to 85% of your benefit at a 22% rate. Nationwide, it's about 40%, but since you guys are better earners and have done better for yourselves, you're going to pay taxes on your Social Security. How unfair is that? Right? We get taxed to death. Right? Now, there is legislation on the table that they're trying to not tax our Social Security. I don't see that happening for a while because you guys know how slow at a snail's pace our government tends to move, right? But again, prepare yourself. That benefit that you're getting, you're going to pay taxes on it. So you got to find the net. Okay, so let's talk about inflation. All right, it's been the buzzword here for the last few years since 2020. Okay, so inflation, as we showed, has been about 3.5%. Right? So let's stick here. So if you have $50,000, how long will you need it? How many years do you need for it to be $100,000 because of inflation? So we're here. So you're looking at about 12 years or so, 14 years or so before that money, that 50 grand needs to turn into 100 grand. So the same thing, if you've got $500,000 or $1 million in your account, that $1 million in 12 years or so has to be $2 million to cover the cost of the things in the future at a 3.5% inflationary rate. So let's go here. In 2004, a loaf of bread in Chicago proper was 99 cents. Now, technically, it's $2.49. No. Been to Mariano's. It's not $2.49. It's like $4, right? Let's go to the two big ones here, all right? A dozen eggs. Somebody tell me where I can find a dozen eggs for $3.49. But yeah, eggs are like $5 now, especially if you're buying good eggs, right? And then obviously gas. It's pretty obvious, right? So inflation is inflation. It is truly a hidden tax. So inflation is just very simple. The dollar has less value, right? So how does the dollar get less valuable? We print more money. So I hear pundits say, hey, Social Security is going to be fine. They'll just print more money. So then what happens? The dollar's worth less, and now we have a hidden tax. So that Social Security money that they're giving us is worth less. It's a vicious cycle, folks. It is. Okay? So, is your current plan tax sufficient? Does it factor in inflation? So here's the money shot, folks. This is what the debt clock says. All right? 35 trillion. This is what the truth is. I showed you that slide with Medicare and Social Security, how unfunded they are. This is what we really owe as a nation. $157 trillion. Okay? Every person in this room's share is nearly $1 million. Yeah. We did this to ourselves by allowing these guys to continue to do that. So be cognizant of that, folks. Okay? So, second part of my story. All righty? So this is a 40-foot boat. Again, liken it to retirement. Now you're 10, 12, 14 years into retirement. You've saved a little bit more. This boat can actually go out on Lake Michigan, deal with some of the winds, right? Not today. Today they said it was like 7 to 10 foot waves. But you can take this boat out there and you can captain this boat yourself, right? But if you don't have the experience, that docking that boat can be pretty difficult, right? So I knew a guy in the 90s who was always on his boats with his friends. And he was watching this gentleman try and dock this boat at Diversey Harbor. Very similar boat, same size. And he was struggling. He's hitting the buoys. It's hitting the dock. And he's watching it for 12 to 15 minutes, just struggling. He's like, man, we got to help him. So he goes around and he says, hey, do you need some help? He goes, yes, please. He gets up there. It's an African-American gentleman. He's helping him out. They get to talking. The guy says, hey, I'm Scott. Hey, I'm Joe. And about 15 minutes later, he docks it without doing any more damage to the boat. It just so happens that guy is Scottie Pippen. So he helped Scottie Pippen dock his boat. Okay. Scottie Pippen had that boat for about a month at that point, right? But he still wasn't experienced enough to be the captain of that boat to dock it. Yeah, you can take that boat out on Lake Michigan and you're fine, but docking it is a whole different story, okay? I'll finish that story here shortly. All righty, so market volatility and your retirement score. Yes, folks, based on what you have a retirement score, kind of like your credit score, okay? So we're going to talk about market volatility, depth and drop, recovery time, getting back to even, timing the market, and this is the big one. Everybody write this down, sequence of returns risk. This is what you guys have to truly be aware of, and I'm going to show you why. Okay, in your folder, you've got this page right here. Everybody please take this out. Okay, this is going to take a little bit longer because we really got to get this concept. All righty. So, history of bear markets. Okay, we hear, oh, we've been on this bull run. Market's been great. We all have this false sense of security. The S&P year to date right now for the last year has credited us 30%. Everybody's happy. We're all having a party. We're all having a party. Okay? Okay? It's not realistic, and I'm going to show you why. So let's go down to 2000. In 2000 to 2001, March of 2000 to September of 2001, we had 549 days of a bear market. 36.77% the market was down in that time frame. From January 2002 up to October 2002, 278 days, the market was down 33.75%. Okay? We fast forward to 2007, 2008, October to November of 8, 408 days, 51%, nearly 52%. January 2009 to March 2009, 62 days, 27%. So in this decade, they call it the lost decade. Right? We know what happened, 9/11 and 2008. Okay. The reason I bring that up is imagine if you retired during that time frame. Your ability to garner income from your account. And I'm going to show you technically how you're supposed to take distributions from your account based on economics versus just willy-nilly, okay? So be cognizant of that. Bear markets do last quite a while. So getting back to even, okay? We're going to go down here to the 30%, okay? If you lose 30% of your account at a 3% rate of return, it takes 12 years to get back to even. At a 6% rate of return, it takes 6.1 years. At an 8% rate of return, it takes 4.6 years. Okay. Can anyone tell me what the average rate of return annually on the S&P has been from 2001 to 2023? Can anyone tell me? Somebody throw a number out there. Okay, pretty close. 6%. We hear 7, 8, 9, 10%. I look at prospectuses all the time from folks bringing in their stuff, and it always shows 10%. I'm going to show you what they do. So, what we've seen over the last 22, 23 years is 6%. So if we have a drop here anytime soon, which is expected, you're going to get about a 6% rate of return over the next 22, 23, 24 years, right in that prime time when you guys are going to retire. Okay, so let's talk about real numbers. So if you have 100 grand, you lose 30%, it goes down to 70,000. You need a 42.9% rate of return to get back to 100,000. That's real math, folks. Real math. Okay? In that sheet that you have there, show me where there's been a 42.9% gain in 1 year. It may take 2 years, it may take 3 years. Those are the last 22, 23 years. Those are the actual numbers from the S&P. Okay? Those are hard to come by. But let's say it does happen and you get a 10% rate of return. So it takes you 4 years to get back to even, but you're in retirement. You're taking distributions and withdrawals. So it's not taking you 4 years to get back to retirement. So you got to have a shift, folks, from accumulation to distribution. We're told all the time, how do you handle stocks? Right? You buy low, you sell high. In retirement, you are always selling, guys. When you're taking a distribution, you're selling. It doesn't matter if it's high or low because you need to take the cash out. Just remember that, folks. Now I'm going to show you how this gets even funkier. All righty. So rate of return versus yield. You got 500,000. In that first year, you earned 50%. 750. Great year, right? Next year, not so good. You lose 50%. You're down to 375. Okay, everybody track. The third year, you're at 30%. Well, you recovered. But did you? Look at that number. You're at 487. You haven't recovered. Can anybody tell me in this scenario what the average annual rate of return is? Anybody? That's 10% return every year. Let that sink in. So it's not about the rate of return, right? You got a 10%. 50-50, they cancel each other out. 30 gain, 3 years divided by 30 is 10. This is what we see all day from folks coming into our office. Hey, well, this is what this guy said. This is what this guy said. Let's look at the yield. So again, never ask what the rate of return is. Ask what's my yield. All right, can anybody tell me what the 4% rule is? Okay, so the 4% rule was economist Brennan in the 1990s. So what he did is he took a data set from 1925 to 1975, 50 years, and he quantified the different credits, losses, and he came to this conclusion that if you take out 4% from your account every year and adjust every year thereafter for inflation, so the next year 4.2, your money should last you 30 years without running out. It's called the 4% rule, okay? So think about this. There's two problems I have with this, and most retirement folks have. So you say to me, I have a 401k or an IRA that I haven't paid taxes on, and I've got $1 million. You're telling me I can only access 40,000? Yes, it's the 4% rule, because I don't want to run out of money. But then remember, that's qualified. You still have to pay taxes. You're not netting. So if you're in a 25% tax bracket, that's only $30,000 in income. It's not what you amass, it's how much income you can gather from it. So that's problem number one for me and us, right? That's not fair, right? Secondly, there's a company, write this down, called Dalbar, and they quantify retirement investor behavior and growth. So they said the average retiree, his account or her accounts get credited 3.49%. So if you're withdrawing 4 and you're only earning 3.49, you're going to run out of money. And that's in a perfect world without a downturn. Okay? So they updated that number and said it should be 2.8. As this morning, it was 2.8 to 3.2, depending. So you mean to tell me I have $1 million in that account and I can only take out 28 grand? How unfair is that? And then I've got to pay taxes, so I'm netting 21,000. That's the problem with the 4% rule. He took a data set that didn't make sense. I had a client who came in. He's done very well for himself. He's amassed about $6 million. Did very well for himself. So he brought a prospectus. We're trying to work a portion. I asked him, how much of your money are you willing to lose? He said about 20%. Just okay. So we worked the math, and he brought a prospectus from a guy. He goes, look, this guy's telling me I'm going to earn 10% every year. I said, okay, I work the yield or whatever. It's fine. So in the fine print, that number was based from 1920 until 2020. Yeah. And I asked him, so you plan on living 100 years in retirement? Sure, if you have that time frame, fine. But we don't. We got to look at what the closest history we have. And that's 2000, 2001. Okay, so again, folks, very, very important to understand rates of return when you're taking withdrawals. Okay, this is for all of you who were concerned about market volatility. Pay close attention. Okay, you have the sheet in front of you. These are the actual numbers in the S&P from 2001 to 2003. The actual annual rate of return is 5.9. Okay, 5.9. If you check with Morgan Stanley, BlackRock, all economists, they expect the next 30 years about a 5.5 rate of return on investments. Okay, 5.5. That's all we're getting. We're not getting 8, 9. Get that out of your head. Plan on 5.5 to 6. Okay, even Warren Buffett. All righty. So this particular couple decided the 4% rule be damned. We're taking 5% out. So they're taking $50,000 withdrawals from their account. They had $1 million in 2001, right? So they took that money. Every year they took out $50,000. These are the actual crediting, right? So we get 23 years later, this is where they ended up at. $259,000. They kind of made it, right? Yeah, there's 23 years. But what if they live another 5, 7, 10 years? Right? They better have a great upturn in the market. They're going to run out of money. So they almost made it. Right? So let's base it on this. Right? So then, this is sequence of returns risk. Okay? This is the difference between accumulating and withdrawing money. All right. So what we did, you look at your sheet, we inverted the numbers. Okay? Here are the losses at the end instead of the beginning. This is the end from the beginning. So everybody look at your sheet to see. Go diagonal so you can see the numbers are there. Okay? This isn't smoke and mirrors. This is real math, folks. All right. The same withdrawal, $50,000 a year. The same annual rate of return. Just inverted the numbers, right? We go down to the end. This scenario is $1.7 million. Okay. There they go, folks. You have it in front of you. Okay. This is what you guys have got to be cognizant of with your accounts. This is it, right here. This is it. You guys are so close to retirement, right? If you have losses in your first 4, 5, 6 years, it will have a devastating effect on your ability to withdraw and take distributions from your account. You have to protect yourself here. This is where you really have to protect yourself. In retirement planning, we call it the death zone. 5 years before retirement, at retirement, and 5 years after. You have to protect a large portion of your savings there to make sure that you can deal with a downturn. Okay? Again, folks, this is the same average rate of return, 5.9. So we got to be really aware of what's coming down the pike for us as retirees or future retirees. Okay? Does everybody understand this part of it? Okay, very good. All righty, so I'll show you an example. This lady came into our office. Her name is Betty. Betty came in. She has an advisor. We were talking. She came to one of the events. She was concerned that her advisor didn't understand Social Security. We got to talking, got to know her. Her advisor told her, hey, just file at 62. She goes, hey, I didn't need the money. So we got into it, found out that she was a widower, right? And so we worked through the numbers, and she could file on a survivorship. And she's like, well, then deal with the rest of my money. I said, okay. So this particular lady had $900,000 in her account, okay, IRAs and 401ks. She was 60, okay? She's like, look, I'm planning on retiring at 67. I'm going to file my Social Security at 67, right? So she's collecting her husband's spousal support at 62, okay? So I asked her, how much of that $900,000 are you willing to lose? That's the question I ask everybody who comes in. She's like, none of it. None of it. So I said, how much income do you need at 67 plus Social Security to put you in a position to thrive in retirement? She said like 22. I said, no, Betty, without changing your current lifestyle. Folks, you don't have to change your current lifestyle. That's a myth, okay? There's ways of, they tell you, oh, you got to live 60 to 70% of your highest earning year. You don't, folks, you don't. Okay, there's better ways. So I told her, she goes, okay, $48,000. That's what I need guaranteed. So we have a couple different unique asset classes. So we took $387,000 of that $900,000 and placed it with one of these asset classes. In 7 years, she has a guaranteed income from that 387 of $48,000, right? Plus her Social Security. She goes, that's phenomenal, right? We still left 500 and some odd thousand in her at-risk account. It's like, we don't need to deal with that. I got you to where you need it. You can deal with the rest however you want to. So she went to her advisor and said, hey, what can you do with my $387,000 in 7 years? And he's like, well, you know, based on what we have, we'll double it for you in 7 years. What did he do? What annual rate of return did he quote her? Anybody? 10%. 10%. That's what they do, 10%. So in 7 years, if you're getting a 10% annual rate of return, your money doubles. So he showed her that 387 turns into 774. So I said, okay, pie in the sky, but let's say hypothetically that does happen, Betty, right? So according to the 4% rule, you can only access $31,000 off that 774. Is that what you want? She goes, no, I need the 48. Then I said to her, Betty, so what happens if when you retire, the next decade is like the lost decade, 2000 to 2012? Right? I'm in trouble, right? So this is not guaranteed, right? And imagine if we have a lost decade. She went back to her guy, can you guarantee that 10%? He said, no, of course he can't. She signed up with us. And she's like, hey, can you handle my other 500,000? Yes, we can. So the reason I bring this up is to show you that it's not about what you're going to accumulate when you retire or at retirement. It's what income you can get out of your retirement nest egg. Okay? We're almost done with my story. Now you're here, folks. You're 20, 25 years into retirement. You've amassed a pretty substantial retirement nest egg. Excuse me? All right? You got a super yacht. It's beautiful. Now, this particular ship can go on the open seas on the ocean. It can deal with anything, right? That can deal with waves 20, 30 footers. Magnificent, right? However, on the open seas, yeah, every one of us here can captain that ship on the open seas, right? But according to maritime law, in certain docks across our country, because that boat is so big, you need what's called a harbor pilot to dock that boat. And let me tell you what a harbor pilot does. A harbor pilot is one of the highest paid professions. They are on call. So when a particular boat that size for that harbor gets 2 to 3 miles from the harbor, they get the call. They jump on a speedboat and they speed off to that boat. They climb on a rope and get on that boat and they dock that boat in the harbor. So again, your captain, if you have your own captain, sure, he can captain that boat. You can captain that boat. But to dock that boat at most docks and harbors, you need a harbor pilot. Okay, so on the open seas, you've amassed that amount of money, you're doing well. You get a downturn, hey, you can deal with it because you have time. You're on the open seas, right? So again, I'll finish this story here shortly. All right, your health and retirement. Longevity risks, okay? You guys have seen the numbers. Average retirement is 17, 18 years to 22 years, right? We're going to cover that here shortly. Rising healthcare costs and long-term care. Okay, so here are the national averages, right? A 65-year-old can expect to live another 19 to 21 years on average. A third of 65-year-olds will reach age 90. 1 in 7 will live beyond age 95. Got about 35 people here, so about 5 of you are going to live past 95. The average American lives in retirement for 18 years, but retirement can last 20, 30 years. This creates a risk of running out of money. That's one of the top 12 concerns and complaints on that sheet. Running out of money. Okay? So, rising healthcare costs. We've got a growing population. Obviously, they say we have 335 million people here, where it's more like 370 million. Aging seniors, disease prevalence, 2020. About 70% of people 65 will require some type of long-term care. Average nursing home stay is 835 days. Okay? All righty, let's talk about long-term care and the myths behind long-term care. So a bunch of surveys over the last 10 years have been conducted, and it indicated that people are confused. Most think that Medicare pays plays a major role in long-term care. In fact, Medicare doesn't cover any type of long-term care, folks, whether in nursing home, assisted living, community, or at home. Remember that, folks. Medicare doesn't pay anything in long-term care. Nothing. Okay. Here's the biggest payer of long-term care in our country. It's Medicaid. Okay. Most of you don't qualify for Medicaid. Unless something catastrophic happens to you in retirement and you lose all your assets, then you can get on Medicaid. That's a miserable existence. Look at the second biggest payer, folks. Out of pocket. 38%. Who's paying that? Where's that money coming from? From your retirement accounts. Okay? Here's the smallest payer, private insurance. 5% of the folks in this room have some type of long-term care. Okay? I'm going to show you some of the statistics on long-term care. I'm not here to scare you, but it's just the reality of it. Medicare will pay for 20 days, 13 days, but it's not considered long-term care. So what is long-term care? The goal of long-term care is not to cure an illness, but to give an individual an optimal level of functioning. Long-term care includes a variety of medical, social, personal, supportive, and specialized services needed by those who have lost some capacity for self-care because of a chronic illness or disabling condition. So these are the 6 activities of daily living: bathing, eating, dressing, transferring, toileting, and continence. So if you hit 2 of those, you qualify for long-term care. Okay? So let's look at some of the data and the facts. National average cost of long-term care in 2020, right? Adult day health care, about $1,600 a month. Assisted living facilities, about $4,300 a month. Homemaker health aid, $4,500. Nursing home care, semi-private, you're looking at $93,000 annually. Nursing home care private room at $105,000. Now, these are national averages. As we all know, everything costs more in our state. Okay? So add another 10 to 12 to 15% to those numbers. Okay? Some more facts. An average length of long-term care needed for a man, 2.2 years. For a lady, 3.7 years. Average length of long-term care event for Alzheimer's or dementia diagnosis is 8 years. 8 years. And we saw how much they cost. Okay? So 70% of an American turning 65 today has a chance of requiring long-term care, about 70%. And those needing care, 20% will need it longer than 5 years. You may not need care, but if you do, how will it affect your family? All right. I use the spouse. It affects everyone. Our son-in-law's dad was in another country. He flipped his car. He's a paraplegic, almost a quadriplegic. They flew him back, and it devastated them, right? It put them in a hole. So it drained them so much that he's on Medicaid now. And the level of service stinks. He has a nurse coming in. It's bad, folks. Okay? I bring that up because it's really touched us personally. Some of you have dealt with folks who have been in long-term care situations, right? So again, you got to protect yourself and be aware, right? So if you need care, how will you pay for it? As I stated earlier, this is not your parents' long-term care. Most of you in this room can afford long-term care. You'd be surprised. There's programs out there, different companies that offer long-term care that is so different from what it was before. I have a client. I've been working with her for a little while. She's a nurse. She deals with senior citizens. She's a nurse in Chicago. And she was concerned. She started seeing them, and she's like, man, Israel, help me out on some long-term care. She got some quotes from some people through work, through her HR, and she's like, hey, okay. She couldn't afford it that way. We revisited her portfolio, and we set her up with a slight tweak to what she's doing. And if she has a long-term care event, it will pay anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 a month for the rest of her life, just by a little change. Most folks don't understand that that's available to you guys, okay? It ain't what you know, that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so, right? It's what we think, the perception that we have, what we've been told, what we hear on TV, right? There are options available for you folks. All righty, we're at the end of my story, all right? Now we're 30, 35 years in retirement. You've amassed a substantial nest egg. This is your retirement now. You got a cruise ship. How many been on a cruise? Fabulous, right? Amazing. That ship can withstand anything unless there's issue with the food, right? Or a sickness on board. It's different. All right? So every single person in here can captain this ship because it's self-piloting, right? It's in the open ocean. GPS and all that stuff, right? But this ship for sure, every single harbor that you go into, you need a harbor pilot to dock this ship. Okay? Again, it could withstand anything. You have amassed a pretty substantial nest egg, and you have a little downturn while you're in the open seas, while you're accumulating, right? You're fine. But when you're coming in to retirement, you're not on the open seas anymore. You got to dock your retirement ships, so to speak. Okay? So I'll finish this story here in a second. All righty. So I get asked this by quite a few people who come to these events. Yeah, I've got an advisor. I've got this guy at Chase, Morgan Stanley, EJ, Merrill Lynch, right? So what should I expect from a financial professional, they ask. Well, I said, well, they got to understand your needs, first of all. Always put your best interests first. They got to have client education. They got to show you what you need to look out for periodically, right? They have to have a written retirement plan. They have to make sure that you have a written retirement plan. If you don't write it down, it's just a wish, guys. It's not a goal. Write it down, folks. If you don't have a retirement plan, I would get on that as soon as I leave here. That is the most important thing that you can get from this class. Write it down, okay? Communication and periodic reviews. I get this all the time. Russ and I were talking about this today. The question you got to ask yourself, when's the last time I sat with my guy or my gal? You got to sit with them every year, at least have a phone call. And especially now with Zoom, have a Zoom. I have a client that's every 3 months, right? So again, this is what you should expect from your financial professional, okay? Don't settle for less. You've earned it. They're getting paid on your money. I had a young lady come in, and she's like, it was a friend of their family, and I was like, hey, they've done a great job for you guys. You guys have earned quite a bit. She slams her hand on the table. A monkey can do what he did. I was like, no, they can't. But he wasn't doing any follow-up or follow-through and helping them. He had no idea what Social Security was about either. Okay? So, I'm part of an organization called Adult Financial Education Services. It's a not-for-profit. So I used to do primarily maximizing Social Security. So through them, because of maximizing Social Security, and they're a not-for-profit, I had to offer a one-on-one complimentary meeting. Okay? So I stopped doing that with them and just did it for my own practice. So everybody take out that sheet very quickly. We're almost done. This sheet here, everybody take it out. Okay? Now, on the bottom there, it says yes or no for a complimentary meeting. Okay? We're not going to fill that out yet, but I'm going to show you what this means to you. So, if you want this one-on-one complimentary meeting, this is what the value you're going to get just from that meeting. We're going to discover your red line time frame. What is that? I'm going to tell you whether you're going to run out of money or not, or how long your money is going to last right away. Here's why. We stress test your money at a level that's never been stress tested before. We don't use emotion. We use math and science. Some of you know or have heard the Monte Carlo simulation. We go further than that, guys. We stress test your money at a level, and we're going to let you know what your time frame is for running out of money. Okay. The other slide that I shared with you guys, the retirement scorecard. You have a retirement score. I'm going to tell you what your retirement score. Most of the folks in these rooms, their score is about 60, which is about 60% chance of not running out of money in 25 years. I had a young lady from Tuesday. She's like, I need this meeting. I need it now. So I met with her today. And we went through her information, and she had one of the best retirement scores I've ever seen. It was a 99. We're going to cook those numbers and see. It's probably 100%. But the peace of mind she had leaving our office, the joy on her face that I said, you've done a great job. We're going to tell you that too, if you've done a great job. But we're going to show you, okay? We're going to let you know if you can potentially put together a tax-efficient plan with what you have. We're also going to do an analysis for you on long-term care or setting up a personal pension. By show of hands in the room, how many of us would rather have a pension than a 401k? I would think there would be more hands. Your pension's guaranteed, folks, for the rest of your life, okay? So converting what you have into a personal pension is better because, again, it's not about that nest egg. It's about how much income you can get out of it, okay? So very quickly, that strategy session, what's going to happen, I'm going to get to know you. I've been talking a lot. I'll get to know your personal situation. Will you learn something new? Of course you will. This has been pretty generic for the general public, right? So when you get there, you're going to ask me questions about your personal situation. You're going to learn something new. How long would that meeting take? 45 minutes to an hour. You've earned it, folks. We used to do tons of dinner seminars, and we used to feed people. We didn't feed you guys. And you guys came out here on a Thursday, the end of the week, for an entire hour. We've gone over. It's an hour and 15. And you've sat here learning. You've earned it. So you've earned the right to sit with me for an hour. All right? What should I bring? You don't have to bring anything, folks. Nothing at all, right? However, when you turn this in, and we'll go through this in a second, the ladies are going to hand you a packet. In that packet, there's going to be a financial questionnaire. If you want to fill that out, the more information you bring to that meeting, the better that meeting is going to be for you, okay? Some folks bring their statements. The lady today brought her whole retirement life, and it's pretty neat. So again, you don't have to bring anything, but the more information, the better. Will you try and sell me anything, folks? Absolutely not. As you can tell, we're different here. We're not here to sell you anything. I've been incredibly fortunate in my life with our practice to have so many clients, and we get a ton of referrals, so I'm not going to sell you anything. I feel that this is a service that I provide for the public, and it comes back to me. Whatever you call it, reaping what you sow, karma, it always comes back to us. Because again, for every client we sit with, we get 2 referrals. It's just how the math works. So again, not doing it out of the kindness of my heart. I'm trying to help, but again, it's for your benefit. How will you feel when it's over? Like the young lady today, great. You'll feel better. You'll have a little bit more confidence, right? You'll have a little bit more hope for some of you that are concerned right now. Where will it take place? Anywhere, folks. Well, I would rather you guys come to the office where, I know this is a bad word, but we're still considered Chicago. We're right across the street from Park Ridge. So we're on East River Road and Bryn Mawr, the Triangle Plaza. You've all driven by those buildings, those beautiful glass buildings. We're on the 13th and 14th floor, okay? Now, if you folks are still working and don't want to come to the office, I understand. I'll meet you in your home. I don't want you guys rushing from work to get to the office. That becomes a nightmare, and then you're dealing with other stuff and traffic. I don't mind coming to your home. I won't meet you at coffee shops, folks, because when we talk, there may be some personal information, and I want anybody who's listening in, okay? What will be the next steps after that meeting? That's totally up to you. Most of you are going to walk away with that with valuable information. Some of you are going to say, hey, you know what? I'd like for you to help me with this. Others are going to say, hey, Israel, it's great meeting you. Thank you for this information, but I don't need the level of service that you're providing right now. Either way, that's up to you. Okay, we're almost done here, folks. You may think I don't have my calendar. It doesn't matter, folks. It's the act of setting that appointment. Everybody take out this sheet here. On the back, there's some times. If there's no time in the box, that's already been taken. Okay, you can pick a couple times and circle them, right? And we'll work with you if you don't have your calendar. All right? You may be thinking, I want to think about everything that I've heard today. You better, folks. Especially sequence of return risks and understanding when to file. Because planning is important for Social Security, right? But what happens to folks is they'll only retain 10, 15, 20% of what they heard here. And then later on, they'll think, oh, I needed this, I needed this. The sooner you act, the better you're going to position yourself. Already, you've taken the time tonight This is a piggyback off of it or an extension of it. Okay. And here, the 800-pound gorilla in the room. I already have an advisor. That's okay. I'm not here to replace your advisor. That's not my job. Okay. But think about it, folks. Subconsciously, you're here for a reason. You can rationalize and justify all you want. Say, well, my advisor isn't really versed in Social Security. That's the first thing I hear. Or my advisor isn't really versed in long-term care. Okay. So that advisor isn't a retirement specialist then, for all intent purposes, folks. And again, I'm not knocking your advisor. I have 6 friends who are wealth advisors right now. Morgan Stanley, again, Merrill Lynch. And they come to me for help on retirement issues because those brokerage houses don't offer some of the stuff that we have to offer, okay? So again, not here to replace your advisor. All righty, folks, we're going to end the story here. We started with the rowboat, right? That's when you first started. That boat does not do well on the open seas. You're risking your life, unless you're Canadian, right? Then you got here 10, 15 years later, 40-foot boat. Not really good on the open seas, good on the lake, can deal with some of the turbulence and the wind and the waves, right? So a little downturn in the market, your account, you can deal with it, especially at that time because you have a longer time frame. All right. Time is your friend at this point. Then you get here. Now, time isn't your friend here, but you've amassed such a large retirement nest egg, right, that a blip here and a blip here, the percentage is high, the dollar amounts are high, but you still have a substantial amount of money. Now, this boat, you've done it yourself or you've got an advisor that can captain that boat on the open seas. But to dock that boat in some harbors and docks, you need a harbor pilot. You can't dock this yourself, right? And then we get here. This is where most of you guys are. You're at retirement, right before retirement, and you've amassed a pretty substantial nest egg, and this is it for you. You may have a couple more years of earning, but this is basically the number that you're going to have. Okay, this you certainly can't harbor and dock that ship by yourself. You need a harbor pilot in every single harbor. And then some of us are here. All right. You definitely need a harbor pilot and some assistance. Right. Most of us aren't here. Right. We do have clients that are here, but most of us are here. Now, I brought this up to you folks, the harbor pilot. The harbor pilot is the most important pilot when you get to a boat this size or that cargo ship. It is the most important job on docking those ships. Okay? There's a huge difference between a captain and a harbor pilot. So now that you're getting into the end of retirement, it's time to dock your ship, your retirement account. And it's time to pick up that phone and call that harbor pilot. Let that harbor pilot get on your ship. Folks, I'm that harbor pilot. That's what I specialize in. Retirement, 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 retirement. So I'd love the opportunity to give you a second opinion on what you have. So here's the sheet. You checked off some of the concerns that you had when you came in here. Now, if there's some new concerns, do me a favor and circle those, okay? If something was brought to light that you didn't think you were concerned about, circle those as well. You're going to turn these in regardless for me, please. Appreciate it. Now, if you want to take us up on that complimentary meeting, check yes. Now, let me tell you what yes means. It certainly does not mean you're going to become a client. Okay? We are very selective in the people that we work with. But what that yes says, hey, I want a second opinion. I had these 3, 4, 5 concerns here, and I want to see if there's anything that you can do to point me in a direction and put me on a path. That meeting, we're going to sit there, and in that meeting, I'm going to tell you up front that if any point I don't feel we're going to be a good fit for you, I'm going to let you know. Maybe the meeting's only a half hour, 45 minutes. And I'm going to ask you the same thing in the beginning. At any point in this meeting, if you don't feel we're a good fit for you, let me know. No is okay. So that's what yes means. You're not becoming a client. You're just getting that second opinion. Let me tell you what no means. No means you're okay. You've taken enough information from this. You feel confident in what you have. You feel confident in your current advisor. You're going to be okay. That's okay too, folks. But if I can just give it one last gasp, folks, when you go to a doctor, and you have a headache or you have a certain issue, the doctor's going to say, hey, let's prescribe you this. How long has it been? They're generalists. But you go to that doctor of chest pains, and then what are they going to say? They're going to send you to a specialist, right? A heart doctor. Or you need a hip replacement. They're going to go to a specialist, right? You've done a good job as a generalist right now, or your advisor. I'm that specialist as well. So take advantage of that, folks. You've earned it. You want to live the best life you can in retirement. Those are your golden years. And I make you this one